If you like this channel and what I do here, please help to support my work by checking out one of my books, available from Lulu Publishing and Amazon.com. Thank you. Hi folks, Carl James here from Electric Media Madness, joining myself and Dan Ryan. How you doing, mate?
Suffering.
Must be that day again.
Yep.
Star Trek Discovery. It's a rare occasion actually when you can sum up a story really, really quickly, because it isn't one of those episodes where it's like something here, something there, something there, something there, something there. It's like, it's pretty much straightforward. Giorgio is dying. She's phasing out of existence. She can't put her hands through things occasionally here and there, and she keeps getting that weird spiky thing going on with her face and her head and all that, which we'll talk about that in a minute. But other than that, it's just like they do some work on the computers and they find an option to save her, but it's all very, very vague, isn't it? It's all very vague. Yeah. It's just really nonsensical. They go to this planet. They get permission from Admiral Vance to go to I mean, that's all nonsensical as well, because it's like they're all sort of agreeing to save Giorgio, aren't they? Bearing in mind that she's like,
when they know that like Elsewhere's about to get attacked as well.
Yeah, when they've got all that other stuff going on as well. But that's not a priority, apparently. Giorgio is, such is the case with some of these characters in Discovery. So they find this planet. The planet offers her like a 5% chance of survival as opposed to the current 0% that she apparently has. They go to this planet, this snowy planet, and then they find this door and this man sitting in a deck chair next to it, like he's the toll booth attendant for this weird sort of portal thing. And he gets out this newspaper, which we'll talk about some other bits to do with that in a second. And it says on the front of it, Giorgio is going to die, or something to that effect. And he says, well, you've got a chance if you go through this door, and it's just like a door thing. And so she goes to the door, and she finds herself in the Terran universe again, back in the past as well. And she's reliving the day that Michael Burnham betrayed her. I mean, it's never explicitly made clear that that's what she's got to do. No. She's just got it into her head, hasn't she? That's the thing that, you know, in some way, by being a nicer person, or something to that effect, if you could call it that, and saving Michael Burnham, even though clearly Michael Burnham deserved all she got, didn't she?
Oh, definitely, yeah. She's like a psychopath who wants to kill her.
She's a psychopathic nutcase, she really is. But she does, she saves her life. She spares her life, I should say. And that's where the episode ends, really, isn't it? That really is all there is to say about it. There's nothing, there's a few other bits and pieces that we've noted that we wanted to discuss.
Michael Burnham got demoted, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why is she constantly in these meetings with the captain and admiral? Why not the actual first officer?
Yeah.
And on to first officer as well. Oh, but this irritates me so much. Why does everyone call her number one? That's to call her by her rank or her name, like
because as Doomcock would say, the great Doomcock. You know, it's just another case of the bestest ever. You know, they've got to be everywhere. They've got to be involved in everything. You know, and we had another example again of Michael Burnham going off on the mission again, at the forefront of it all. Again, this is another episode in a row. So you're absolutely right.
But it annoys me that they call Tilly number one. Stop calling. That's what the captain calls her. Everyone else should call her by her name or her rank, and it irritates me. It's just so like cringy. It's like they chucked on a Next Generation episode. They heard Picard call Riker number one. And they were like, "That's what you call your first officer."
Yeah, which it was only something that Picard did.
Yeah,
I mean, it has sort of appeared here and there in other little tiny corners of Star Trek, but generally that was a Picard thing. It was something that I don't know what his reasons were for calling his first officers number one. I suppose because it's the first officer number one. I don't know.
But everyone on the ship
no one else
does
did it. Janeway didn't do it. Cisco didn't do it. Kirk didn't do it. Archer didn't do it. You know,
Instead of calling Tilly just Tilly or Ensign Tilly or whatever, they're like, right, number one. How's it going? It's like, stop.
Number one.
It's so irritating.
Yeah, it is, and more to the point, because she doesn't deserve it. She doesn't deserve it. And there was one thing. Well, there's a couple of little things that made me smile in this episode, which I quite liked, much as I feel dirty saying it. But when Giorgio says, "Well, if it isn't Saru's walking command blunder, found a way to kill everybody on board yet, have we?" I'm going to call you Killy. I mean, really, really laying it into her, isn't she? And I was like, yeah, somebody's finally saying what people like us have been thinking all along. But it was completely nullified 10 minutes later, wasn't it? Because she was like, basically she just dropped her kegs and said, "Hey, I kissed my arse," because it's like all is good. And then Tilly's like, "Oh, in a weird way, I learned so much from you," because there were another group of bestest evers.
What did she like? All she ever said to her is like,
and she actually hugs her back, doesn't she, as well? Yeah. It's just so. I don't know. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, well, why everything? Everything just.
It's totally inconsistent, isn't it? There's no continuity. I mean, outside of in the larger part of Trek, we'll talk about something else that's continuity, a continuity minefield in a minute. But even the characters aren't consistent, are they? They're just like Giorgio, as at every step of the way, has pretty much shown that even if she did like somebody or have anything, she certainly wouldn't show it. I wouldn't say anything nice to anybody. But and I know the disco plebs out there, as I'll call them, will say, "Well, she's going to die now, so she wants to finally show her feelings for Tilly and Saru and all the rest of it." I mean,
that doesn't even go against the lore of their own show, them saying that, though, because they've basically established that the Terrans are like genetically angry and genetically evil. That's it.
And they wouldn't do that anyway. Yeah, they wouldn't go they wouldn't act
just
that way. Yeah.
Kill themselves if they were to give in to their joyous emotions.
Yeah, basically. Or even to show that they showed any.
Because that's against what they believe in. So bots be gone.
I mean, it's already been very, very much established that people in the mirror universe are capable of being compassionate. They are capable. They're not all. So that's another blunder that they made there. There's something that they just created up off the hoof and just sort of said, "Oh yeah, anybody in that universe is," because we've seen goodness and compassion and all that kind of thing in humans, in the mirror universe, in other incarnations of the mirror universe. Particularly in Deep Space Nine, we've seen human characters who, well, for example, we had the Terran resistance against the Cardassian Klingon alliance, and yes, they were shady, but some of them were capable of compassion. Some of them were capable of being decent, and they weren't automatically just trying to kill people. They did do good things. So that law of some genetics or whatever that they've created doesn't hold up. And they throw another one in there in this one. I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about this one. I'll put in my 2 pence as well. But they threw in another potential spanner in the works, trying to say, this happens if you do this. And no, it doesn't.
So that if you travel to a parallel universe and then travel through time, apparently you start to do that weird thing that Kurtzman's discovered that he likes with the effects.
Yeah,
spiking out.
The sticky outy thing. Yeah. The spiky thing.
And it kills you.
So, but it doesn't. we know that from many incarnations and years and characters on Star Trek. We briefly discussed this afterwards, and if we'd had time, we probably could find dozens of examples, or certainly at least a dozen examples. But 2 that came up straight off the top of our head. First one was Tasha Yar in Next Generation. She travels into a parallel universe. Well, from a parallel. Well, I suppose you call it into a parallel universe and through time. When she returns to the past with the Enterprise C, has a life there, gets married to a Romulan, has a child with it. The Romulan child being Sela, who we see later in the series. If that genetic material was passed on to Sela, then Sela wouldn't have lived to be an adult. But let's put that aside and just say I mean, Tasha Yar lived for several years, and she died at the hands of her Romulan husband, for betraying him. She betrayed him because she tried to sneak away with Seela in the night and whatever. If that's true of those kind of then she would have died. They don't specifically say the Terran parallel universe and time travel. They just say parallel any parallel universes and time travel. So I'm sure. I mean, most of the characters in Star Trek have travelled through time and gone to parallel universes at some point or another. So do you travel through a parallel universe and time travel at the same time that causes that, or is it just if you have happened to have time travelled and parallel universe? It's like, once I ate beef, once I ate chicken, and now I didn't eat beef and chicken at the same time, but but even if it is at the same time, there's an example with Tasha Yar. And when I was talking to you, another example is Spock. Actually, Spock.
Yeah.
In the 2009 film, he travels into the Kelvin timeline, a parallel universe, because that's what parallel universes are. They're skewed timelines where something goes off in a different direction. He travels through time into a parallel universe, and it doesn't do him any harm. He lives to be a grand old age, and they've said that in their own continuity in the show no less than 3 weeks ago, haven't they? With Unification Part 3, that Spock did live to be a grand old age. He didn't die with spiky things coming out of his head and whatever, So they fucked up their own internal continuity.
Yeah.
It just shows that one writer does not listen to any other writers or doesn't even. But that's it. This week's episode's done. I haven't got to remember anything from that episode ever again. On to the next week. Yeah. And it's like every episode is the first episode. It's like nothing ever came before it. Every episode is the first episode. That's their mentality writing it, or they're suffering from some sort of weird Mandela effect type thing or something like that, or they've got no capacity to retain anything, or they're totally and utterly incompetent, which is probably that. It's probably that. Yeah. So whenever they think they're being so profound and so clever and so sciencey and wibbly wobbly timey wimey, as Doctor Who would have said. Yeah, but no, they're not, because they just don't even bother to take the time to look at how these things work in Star Trek. And like you said, they probably just looked on Wikipedia or whatever. Picard did this. It's the same with that time soldier that we saw at the beginning, the hologram of the time soldier, and it is a member berry for you, Star Trek fans, because we really do like Star Trek. We're going to say temporal Cold War. That's a reference to Enterprise. And weaponizing time. That's a reference to Enterprise. So without actually saying it, and obviously he's wearing a TNG uniform. Commander, whatever his name was, that time soldier. So member berries. You know what I mean? But they don't. It's just it's sauce for the goose, isn't it? It's as Spock once said. So any more that you want
thinking
to
about it, like this episode, this season has just been like, I don't even know how people can defend this, because what's even happened this season? Nothing's really happened. So they come to the future, they make some friends or whatever. They upgrade the ship a bit. Well, they make some acquaintances.
Oh, sorry, just you mentioned about upgrading the ship. I had a thought in this episode, right? What happens if for some reason some anomaly hit the Enterprise? Sorry, that was a very bad Freudian slip there. Hit the Discovery. God forbid that I should call it the Enterprise. Hit the Discovery and caused a power failure, massive power failure. All power just went, right? Which has happened a lot in Star Trek on ships, right? Those warp nacelles that are attached by electricity energy, they just float away. It's like it'd be like a boat with some oars. I've dropped the fucking oars in the sea. We can't row now, And the ship, even if they got power back, they'd just be like there because there's no engines to fly them anywhere.
They'd have to release an explosive to knock them into one. And then do it again to go back.
What they'll do is they'll get a big long pole with a metal hook on it, and they'll stick it out the window, and they'll be like, "Oh, I can reach it! I can reach it!" Oh, it's one of those things. Oh, this will look cool. This will sound cool. No. Sorry, carry on. But I thought when I thought about it, I thought I've got to mention this because
that is true. Yeah, but nothing's happened really this season. They've just met a few people, got a bit of information. Like with 9 episodes in, and like the main plot of finding out what happened with the burn. Nothing's really a small development this episode.
They sprinkle tiny little bits in, don't they? Here and there.
Decrypted the message, the distress call.
All along the watchtower. Dun, 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 dun. Sorry. Rip off!
Yeah.
You steal things from people, as Az would say.
They do. Yeah. They steal everything from everyone.
They steal everything, don't they? Yeah.
And they have that much money that they can get away with it every time.
Yeah. Every single time. Yeah. They can plagiarise people and steal people's livelihoods. They've just got high-priced lawyers, and it all just gets thrown out of court, and they can just steal everything. They've got no imagination, and like you say, they're not even really. It is. I mean, there's nothing good to say about Star Trek Discovery anyway. We've watched them all. We've suffered for it, but we have seen the whole show so far. Yeah. We keep watching them because we like to show people the ineptitude of what is going on here, how it's not Star Trek anymore, how they don't believe in all the virtue signaling and identity politics they put into it. They don't believe it. It's just tokenistic. It comes from a very false place. All of those things. That's the reason why we keep watching it, is to show people, to demonstrate all these examples of how these things happen. And we have evidence that that's the case as well, as we talked about a couple of videos back for that particular issue. But in terms of storytelling, it's such a bland. It's going nowhere, isn't it? You actually look.
Yeah, nowhere.
Yeah, and I do think that their mentality of we don't need to remember what happened last week. I think they genuinely believe that the viewers think like that as well. So the viewers will forget. If you looked at this block, well, a lot of them do. The ones that really like the show, yeah. You look at this block of 9 episodes, the progression, what's actually happened? Not much of anything, really.
It's about 2 episodes worth of progression.
Yeah. Which is consistent with Kurtzman Trek, because Picard was the same. We said that, didn't we, after we watched all of them, It was probably a movie's worth of actual solid story there.
But the problem with Picard, and that makes that like so much worse than this, is you as a viewer know basically everything by episode 2. But you have to watch the characters, find that information,
learn it all.
And it takes them like 7 episodes, which is like most of the show.
That's right. Yeah. And what they did was they gave the bulk of it to the viewer, and then they left the last little bit off. So then you were just waiting for 6-7 episodes, waiting for the characters to catch up to the last little bit of information, which then gets delivered to you with space orchids and space ocarinas that repair things, and floating holographic heads, and footballs with bombs in them, and characters that jump out of the middle of the air from nowhere, and then the next second they disappear and you never see them again, and that sort of nonsensical way of, which is Discovery as well, Discovery to a T.
At least with Discovery, we find it out with the characters, though. It's not.
Yeah, I suppose so. Yeah. Which is why it feels painful.
Yeah.
Because these little tiny tidbits that are just like a minute's worth of an episode, that's this grand story arc of the burn, which is it's going to be Mikey's spot. That's why they've named it the burn. I think you and I said that in our very first review. The similarity between Burnham and all that, and we can theorize about all kinds of. I still think time travel is going to be an aspect of it again. Knowing what we know about the way this series works, the way these writers are, they will not be able to resist the opportunity to find another section of Star Trek mythology that they completely trash, and that usually involves member berries or time travel or parallel universes or so, which I think is essentially why they did this mirror universe revisit again, because they're so far up their own arses. And look at that great thing that we did in season 1 with the Terra, forgetting that it'd been well and truly established. And to be more to the point, and it's going to be a controversial thing saying this, but I actually feel that the mirror universe was pretty much done with. It was exhausted as a story option. over the previous Star Trek series, even before Discovery came along. I felt like they'd really done everything they could possibly do in that universe. The only option would have been to have done a completely new parallel universe. So like the parallel universe that's created in Yesterday's Enterprise, or alternative timelines, or the alternative history we see in the Voyager episode Living Witness, or the alternate, the temporal incursions with Year of Hell in Voyager, all these episodes which, do something like that, create a new parallel universe with a different alternate history instead. If they were clever, they could have done that with this season of Discovery in the future. They could have created a whole new something that really, really worked, but they don't know how to do that. We'll talk about the Guardian portal. I think we might have briefly brought it up in a previous video, but there was the excellent aficionado of all things sci-fi, and is an industry insider, worked in the industry for many years as well, and a great YouTuber, Robert Meyer Burnett, had tweeted something about the Guardian of Forever, City on the Edge of Forever, and that. And that the fans were going to really hate this two-parter because of if it was going to do something to the history of Star Trek that it was going to be unforgivable. I suspect maybe what he did was he'd been privy to something from the episode, which we'll talk about in a second, then maybe assumed that this two-parter was going to trounce all over City on the Edge of Forever, maybe. Yeah. And that was why he assumed that the fans were... that could still happen. I would not put it past the fans to, it might have been a red herring that something like that could still happen in this season of Star Trek. We could have a City on the Edge of Forever trouncing, which would just piss everybody off immensely. But I suspect, and it's just a guess, I can't say anymore, I don't know for certain, but I wonder if one of his contacts had been privy to like some footage or a screenshot or something like that, or a prop or something. But I suspect this prop is the newspaper that the guy who's Carl, his name was, which is weird for me being called Carl as well, sitting guarding the portal, the door thing in his deck chair. And because he flips the newspaper over at one point, and on the back page of the newspaper is like an article or an advert for Edith Keeler's soup kitchen, the refuge that you see in the episode City on the Edge of Forever. That she talks, there's a drawing of her, or his fingers slightly over it, but you can see, and it's like a "we will help you" kind of thing and all that, because that was the job that Edith Keeler did in that episode.
Yeah.
And so it's a reference to that. Now, I can only assume that the reason why that was there was because somebody thought, oh, this idea that we've come up, which we've plagiarized from many, many other things. I mean, even the Carl character is reminiscent of like Q, Mr. Atos in the original Star Trek series, the one who guards that library with the portals that travel to different times and that. They probably thought to themselves, he's guarding the portal, Guardian of, and they thought, oh, that's a bit like the Guardian of Forever in City on the Edge of Forever. Oh, I've got a good idea. Why don't we put Memberberry in on the back of the newspaper that says about Edith Keeler's soup kitchen, and people think, oh, they know their Star Trek, even though they don't. So I think that's what that was.
Or he is the Guardian of Forever.
he's a physical manifestation of the Guardian of Forever. Yeah. Yeah. Instead of just some disembodied voice.
A door instead of like a portal now.
Yeah. Or he'll say something like, I can take on many forms. I don't just have to be a stone ring. I can actually be like a door with a deck chair and a man, but I'm still a disembodied voice. I am the Guardian of Forever. So, yeah, maybe they'll do that at the end of the episode 2. When I'm calling this, I predict what will happen in episode 2 is that she'll become good. Even though they said it's genetically impossible for her, but she'll become good. She'll do something nice to change the nature of the Terran Empire, which will cause it to survive, and it'll become good, or blah, 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 blah. And then she'll come back to Michael Burnham on the snow planet at the end. And because she's changed now and she's a bit of a better person and she's a nice person, she's not going to die. And again, they'll just ignore their own continuity, won't they? And then maybe at that moment when she comes back through the door, the bloke will reveal as a last little minute nod to the, to say, yes, we know Star Trek, It's like, I am the Guardian of Forever and all that. Yeah. Maybe he might even like transform and become the Guardian of, the actual stone thing that we see in the episode. So maybe he did know something. Maybe Robert Meyer Burnett, he might even have seen an image of the Guardian of Forever, and we just haven't seen it yet. That the man in the deck chair and the door and that will transform into the Guardian in the last second. So who knows? Maybe I'm wrong on that one, but I suspect that's generally where this story is going to be. That it's going to go. It'll be a reset, so they can tweak Giorgio's character to make being a bit nicer, maybe. You know, not quite so. Yeah. But speaking of psychopathy and crazy manic behaviour, shall we talk a little bit about the acting and the character portrayals in this episode? You know, I mean, yes, it's the Mirror Universe, but
it wasn't the best acting. I will admit.
That's an understatement.
Some of it was okay, but a lot of it wasn't. A lot of the main characters weren't really.
I almost wanted to have a little list with names by it, and every time they did specific, like you got these long lingering shots of a person's face going like that, and then like the camera would zoom into them a bit, and then it'd cut to the next actor going, like, and then cut to another one going like this. You know, it's just wide eyes, weird mouth expressions. There's like these sort of quivering lips. You see Michael Burnham when the Emperor Giorgio's in the shuttle bathing, and her lips quivering like this, anger sort of thing. Lots of swaggering, and there's some smirking malevolently. And yeah, I know we've seen all that before, but that's really all this episode. The last half of this episode was just that. There wasn't a great deal of dialogue in it either.
It weren't crying in corridors. It was frowning in corridors.
It was frowning and then occasional bouts of mania, like Sonika or Martin Green. I mean, that was acting school level of in this, wasn't it? With all of her shit teeth, like this, you know, and bulging eyes, and that when she thought she was going to die, shouting and. I'm surprised she didn't start effing and jeffing, but, you know, because we haven't had much of that lately, have we?
No.
The swear quotient has gone down unless I'm watching certain versions of it. I don't know.
No,
but,
I don't think it has.
I recall a massive amount of effing and jeffing this season. So, yeah, but it was a one-tone thing. Really not much to say about it. I liked, you know, the potential at the beginning, the idea of where it was going to go. I liked the oddness of the man with the bowler hat in the chair with the newspaper and that. Made me think of Q. For a second, I did think, is this one of the Q? You know, or something like that. Because it had that weird sort of quirkiness of it. I liked that. I don't like to admit that I liked that.
Yeah.
I liked the thing with the newspaper. It reminded me of Death Wish from season 2 of Voyager with the Q, where they've got the magazines, you know, the old and the new, and then they read out the article because the other Q, Quinn, I think his name used to be a writer in the Q Continuum newspaper magazine, you know, but we're omnipotent and it kind of reminded me of that. It also reminded me, and this is going to be a bizarre one for fans of Stargate, but it reminded me of the stories at the end of season 8, I think it was, where Daniel Jackson's in the afterlife waiting to ascend, and there's another ascended, the Anubis ascended one, and he's got this newspaper, and it's got like Anubis undecided as whether he's going to wipe out the universe. Daniel Jackson could prevent it, and it's like it's exactly the same thing as that. I mean, it's hardly an original thing, but it's like this newspaper that's reporting the affairs of the entire omnipotent universe sort of thing. So it's very Q-ish. So I like that. But other than that, so I mean, unless there's anything else you wanted to say about your likes or dislikes, we could go into rating.
Most of it.
Yeah.
I thought I just had like a funny thought. So Giorgio goes through the door. Is Michael Burnham just like stood there, just waiting, just patiently waiting, just staring at the door?
Yeah. It's like I got this vision of Michael Burnham just sitting there in the snow, just like, he's coming back. So I mean, unless there's anything else, shall we rate?
So. Yeah, I think I'll give this one a 2. It wasn't quite as bad.
Really?
Yeah. It wasn't quite as bad as the last couple. So.
No. There was a little. It was mainly the first bit with David Cronenberg's Doctor, chap whose name I can never remember, and the yes, Giorgio slaps Michael Burnham.
Yeah.
I will say no more. That got a point. That for that reason alone, this episode gets a point. Not that I'm advocating violence in any way, shape, or form, but I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that have been waiting for that moment for some time. So yeah, there was a few air punches there for some people, I think. Yeah, I'm going to give this episode a 2 as well. Yeah, there's some little. I like the imagery of the man in the chair by the door. I like the snowy thing, you know, all that kind of stuff, and it was a few little things from the first 20 minutes or so. Everything after that was just, you know. All right, thank you so much, everybody out there, for joining us. We hope you've enjoyed this video. As always, we truly appreciate all your support. So if you can like this video, share it about, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Dan and I would truly, truly appreciate it. Don't forget to look out for Dan's run of Attack on Titan as well, because I think you're going to be going forward with that one, aren't you? That was a great first video, and I'm looking forward to seeing some more, even though I don't follow it. But yeah. But for now, we'll see you again very, very soon. Take care for now. Bye-bye.
Yes, goodbye.